All right, I think we are set and ready to go.
I think
Welcome
so.
everyone. Welcome everyone. We are the Winter Hill Warriors. My name is Chenny Britt. Obviously, I'm with my boy Damon, and you know what this is today. We're gonna break down episode 8 of Shogun, titled "The Abyss of Life." Crazy motherfucking episode. I've been saying that same thing every single stream we do. I'm like, yo, crazy episode, crazy episode. But dude, like, I don't know what to say. It truly is a crazy ass episode. So, any thoughts on the episode before we get going?
Last episode had a jaw-dropping moment or two. This one had maybe four to six. I definitely second what you're saying. It might sound like hyperbole, but this was some crazy shit, man.
Crazy ass shit. Let me switch to the smaller view and let's get going. And you know how this goes. We're gonna do a scene by scene breakdown and whatnot. But without further ado, let's start cooking. And if you drop in the stream and you have certain comments or you think our audio is off and stuff, just let us know. But let's get going. So first scene, I'm calling it 49 days to mourn. So obviously we ended last episode with Nagakato fucking cracking his head open on a rock and dying. And according to these customs at this time, Toranaga gets 49 days to mourn. So even though he's supposed to go surrender in Osaka, he gets 49 days to spend in his home city of Edo to mourn the death of his son. As all of them are marching over, Yabu tells his scribe or whoever that is to record Nagakato's death on his in his book. So I think Yabu is kind of documenting everything in a journal for stories down the line, but he's also ranking deaths. And we know Yabu is obsessed with death, and he's like, man, cracking your own head open, that's a lower ranking death than boiling. So Yabu's a sicko, but the fact that he's actually ranking deaths is just, it's so fucking funny. Seki and his army are going to surround Edo and just wait till 49 days that period ends, and then they'll escort Toranaga to Osaka. Blackthorne, meanwhile, he gets his journals returned to him, and I guess he's no longer going to be Hatamoto once, because now that Toranaga's surrendering, technically Blackthorne's service is complete. And he's not required to go to Osaka with them, and Fuji will manage his estate until he returns, and his fate is uncertain once Toranaga surrenders. Who knows what his enemies are going to do. And Mariko tells Blackthorne, "Look, you're free to find your guys. They're here in Edo. His crew is here in Edo. So, what did you think about that opening?"
To pile onto the Blackthorn point a little bit, his status right now and where he stands has never been more uncertain. The last time he had this little of an idea of where he stood in the grand scheme was probably when he was captured at first by the Japanese when he entered the port. So he is really just kind of looking for a foothold at this point. I think that Yabu, dating back from when he was asking for his will to be written up, once he realized that Toranaga and Ishido were definitely going to war, you're right. He's just constantly thinking of death and constantly trying to log his existence because I think deep down, like he wants to be seen as an important man. Like there's that concept of legacy that a lot of these dudes and a lot of these people in the show talk about. And Yabu definitely can't be excluded from that. Hilarious for him to keep a death ranking, though. You're totally right there. Um, it seemed like on the way in, Blackthorn was catching a lot of the cold shoulder from Toranaga when he tried to express his apologies. Toranaga wasn't really feeling it. And just based on how he was talking to Toranaga at that last meeting, there is a cost to acting so bold in front of everybody like that. So I think Blackthorn, you get the cue right away that this is going to be an episode where he has a lot to learn.
Yeah, agree with that. And yeah, good, nice to mention at one point Blackthorne does try to express his grief and gratitude, or not, maybe not gratitude so much, but just kind of expresses grief to Toranaga, and Toranaga is just not really having it. And it's totally understandable why his son just passed away in one of the worst ways possible. But let's keep going. All right, back at Osaka, Ashido confesses his love to Lady Ochiba. So we learned a few things. We learned that Ochiba was the one who came up with the plan to turn Seki over to their side. So we had touched on this last episode. I think, Damon, you had mentioned that she's probably the mastermind behind this because there's no way Ishido could figure something like this out. And so it looks like they have the upper hand. They're pumped about the surrender. Ochiba is obviously a little bit more cautious because she knows that Toranaga still has that 49-day period and he could do a lot of scheming in that time frame. So she's not as certain about all of this, but Ishido's already jumping the gun and he's like, look, I've always thought you were sexy. Let's get married and make this alliance official. And Ochiba is obviously unsure, but Ishido is a fucking simp, man.
He's a simp, and he also is simping not only for, I would say, trying to outkick his coverage a little bit here, but he is trying to grab some power as well. Sorry about the dogs in the background. I got a couple friends staying with me this weekend. He's trying to consolidate power and basically kind of seize power because remember, there's that whole thing that he's like a middle manager who basically got promoted to CEO as a regent somehow, and they're trying to piece all that together. So this is where we are now in terms of him trying to make a big play here. Let's see how it plays out for him because this was a real big swing. There's still a huge difference between the two of them. She's a killer and he's ready to pop champagne because he thinks Toranaga's in the bag. So her instincts are still so much sharper than his. Incredibly awkward proposal. I think the one thing that gives her pause as well is she does not really want another man to control her the way that Taiko did, and the fact that it might complicate the line of the heir to her son if Ishido is involved in this too, because you never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, that's a good point because if Ishido all of a sudden marries her officially, then Ishido would take on the number one rank for the time being, right? So she would all of a sudden lose all like whatever not whatever power she has, but right away she would have a man be her number one, and it would be a lot harder for her to control him from the background.
Yeah. You could get some like House of Dragon action too, where like, no spoilers, but like if you have another kid and the line of succession is kind of murky, it might give cause to create a new line of succession, which would be pretty terrible at this situation.
Yeah. Quick plug: we're going to be covering House of the Dragon. So watch those videos. But let's keep it moving. Next scene. Fucking motherfucking PowerPoint.
Yep, been saying that for 10 years now.
So yeah, fucking PowerPoints, man. So we cut back to Ito, and man, Nagakado is, his body is being prepared for his funeral, and it's the night before his funeral, and all of Toranaga's men are basically just having a word about Nagakado, and they're mourning about Nagakado, and most of them are basically like, look, he's a reckless motherfucker, but he was brave, but mostly reckless. They're kind of not laughing at him, they're just sad and disappointed at the way he went out. Buntaro tells a story of Nagakado when he was young. He broke his arm, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he wanted to look brave. Was that foolish? Yes, but you got to admit, man, Nagakado, say what you want about him, he's never been afraid. He's never been afraid. And that's what Omi says. Omi ends up giving this pretty heartfelt speech about Nagakado and just saying, look, like, say what you want about him, but he didn't want to go out and surrender. He was always loyal to Toranaga. He basically had a big set of balls. So it's interesting here because Omi can be manipulative, but he really does seem to respect the hell out of Nagakado. What do you think about that little scene the night before the funeral? Because we kind of get a glimpse into how everyone sees Nagakado.
In my episode notes, I actually have in italics, Omi has a soul, question mark. It seemed like he definitely had a lot of feelings he wanted to express. There's a lot of similarities between the two characters. So I think he definitely felt something when that all went down. Another way to look at Nagakado, we'll call it a sacrifice because at this point, we'll get into it a little later on. It didn't really produce much at the time, but it might in the future. He saw himself as the last chance to redeem his father, who was a guy that he's constantly seeking approval from. So it only made sense that he just left it all on the table for that. And even though it didn't work out, you got to give him some props for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next day at the funeral, Nagakato's body is basically going to be burned into ashes. But there's some interesting stuff that comes out as they walk towards the funeral. So first off, Toranaga is not at his own son's funeral, and that's a bit weird, right? And the story is that Toranaga is really, really ill. So he's too sick, it seems on the surface, to be at his own son's funeral. At the same time, there are generals in Edo. Remember, this is Toranaga's home city, so he's got serious firepower here. But there's generals in Edo who are still wearing their armor to the funeral, which is a sign of them protesting Toranaga's surrender. They're still loyal to Toranaga, but they want to fight and die for Toranaga, and they're kind of being defiant right now. But not in a way where they want to rebel against Toranaga necessarily, but in a way where they want to follow him into battle. Yabu wants to fight as well because look, the choice is simple, right? It's basically just surrender and die, or at least fight and maybe have a slim chance. But Hiromatsu tells Yabu, look, actually you're not going to fight, you're going to go to Osaka first. That as the condition of our as one of the conditions of our surrender, you have to go to Osaka to go deliver guns and cannons there. And look, the second he gets to Osaka, they're going to chop his head off. So he's either going to have to commit seppuku at Osaka, or he's going to get his head cut off by someone else anyways. So he knows he's cooked. And as Nagakato's body is burned, and they go through this whole ritual, there's monks there. We actually see Toranaga from afar watching from a balcony. Pretty wild scene there, Damon.
Yeah, I do understand why everybody's a little skeptical because it is weird for him not to be at the funeral. Maybe he's just beat up about it, and we do know he's a little sick, but I don't think that this is really a situation where I feel like he should have been there. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to project an image. We know he's the master of trickery and whatnot. This could be that kind of a situation. Um, the Edo generals look super badass. Like I also saw this on Twitter, so I got to give props there. But there is a general who looks eerily similar to Mac from Always Sunny. It's pretty uncanny. I think the actor actually quote tweeted it. And Omi also sees something
Wait, one
similar
of the
to him in
Japanese
many ways.
generals?
Yeah, he looks so much like Mac from Always Sunny. It's crazy. We'll see it during a later scene, like it'll jump right out to you because it's in one of the gifs. But dude, it is uncanny. Uh, I think Omi, again, not to harp on this too much, but when he sees the funeral pyre burning as well, I think he makes a direct connection to like, hey, this could have been me in a way. This is somebody very similar to me whose life was just cut mad short. You do have a lot of tension brewing now to the like, will they or won't they stand up for themselves and actually fight this out, or will they just give up their necks? I feel like you can't have a season of television where they give up their necks, so I'm not going to go on that side of things, but that's the way people are trying to say it's going right now.
Yeah, everyone's trying to figure out, does Toranaga have a plan up his sleeve, or is he going to actually surrender and basically be a bitch? But next up, we find out that Ochiba actually has a sister. So we got two Jins in this season. We get Jin, the owner of the tea house, and then we get Lady Jin, who's Ochiba's sister, and she's married to one of Toranaga's grandsons. So she recently had a daughter. So that's Toranaga's. She actually might be married to one of Toranaga's sons. I misspoke. So she has a daughter. I think that should be Toranaga's granddaughter or something like that. But I think she might be Ochiba's younger sister. That's what it seems like. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Ochiba has guaranteed her and her family's safety, but that's it. And she hasn't really talked to her sister much other than that. And we find out that Ochiba is someone who just historically has just eaten her pain and kept it inside, similar to Mariko, actually. So Mariko and Jin are kind of talking, and we also learn that Toranaga has not yet come to see his granddaughter yet. So he has not yet seen he basically has not really seen any of his family members. He's just been cooped up inside. As Mariko and Lady Jin are talking, Buntaro shows up and ruins the vibe, and it's just super awkward. But he asks Mariko if she would like some tea, and she does agree. So it's going to lead to that epic tea making scene with Buntaro. But what were your thoughts on just Lady Jin?
I like the insight that we got into what might be going on with Lady Ochiba. So we get that Toranaga's thoughts are in a weird place because even Mariko is like, oh, really? He hasn't met his granddaughter yet, and he's been here for a little bit now. Like, that's kind of odd. And then you have the idea that Lady Ochiba is preferring to stay hidden and, like you say, eating that pain. It'll be interesting to find out how that presents itself. Like, is that why she acts so fierce now? Because she's trying to hide that pain? What's going down there? This might be one of the first times we've seen Mariko do like a double take at one of Toranaga's moves and realize that maybe he doesn't have this all figured out the way I thought he did, which then questions loyalty, which is a huge theme in the episode.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. Loyalty is a major theme. This this scene I titled the European Cup, Euro 1600, because it's just the fucking English versus the Portuguese. But now that Blackthorn has been cut loose as Hatamoto, he's no longer residing in Toranaga's basically his like house, right? Like his his mansion, let's say. So Blackthorn's out on his own trying to buy some charcoal, which I was in the subreddit and they were saying that charcoal can be used for gunpowder. So he's trying to buy charcoal, and now that he's been in Japan for 6+ months, his Japanese has gotten much better, right? So he's trying to communicate. It's still choppy, and Father Alvido just happens to be there, and he sees Blackthorn, and he's definitely impressed at how quickly Blackthorn has come in terms of just getting accustomed to the Japanese culture and then the language, because Japanese is a very difficult language to learn. I think in the book, it said that Blackthorn knows a ton of languages, and just back in those days, to be a pilot, you had to be really fucking smart. So it's not that surprising that Blackthorn picked up that shit pretty quickly. But anyways, Alvido sees him, is shocked. They start talking shit to each other. Basically, Blackthorn is like, I'm going to find my guys, and we're going to fucking seize the black ship, which was pretty funny. And Alvido just kind of laughs at Blackthorn, looks at his clothes, and just like basically gives this hint that, yeah, your men probably aren't even going to recognize you anymore. Look at your clothes. You're wearing all Japanese clothes. Like you're Japanese now, bro. Like you're actually better yet, he's not really fully accepted in Japanese culture, but he's now too far gone to really be accepted by his own men. So he's kind of a man without a country, if you will. But what did you think about that quick interaction, the European Cup 1600?
You knew there was going to be some tension between these two that would come up again, like that they would meet again in a certain way. I think Suji tries to take some digs at Blackthorn because of his status, like now outside of Toranaga's sphere of protection, if you will. Made an interesting point about, will he wear the robes when he goes to see the rest of his crew? Like, will he stick with the culture that's taken him in, or will he totally just go back to what he was before? And again, you don't even really know who the Portuguese are going to be pulling for. You can only hope it's Toranaga at this point, because our man needs some allies.
Yeah, good point on the robes part, because that's going to come up later on in this episode. Speaking of Alvido, aka Suji. Oh yeah, nice. Thanks, Damon, for reminding us that Alvido's Japanese name is Suji. So he's known as Suji to everyone in Japan, but Alvido happens to be an Edo on his own accord. He wasn't sent there by the church, and he's there to talk to Toranaga. And he there's several things he wants to talk about. First of all, he tries to deliver some value, right? He tries to tell Toranaga some info to butter Toranaga up. So the info he tries to give is, hey, all the Council of Regents are being controlled by Ashido now, which Toranaga already knows. And both Hiromatsu and Toranaga are like, dude, he already fucking knows that. He has spies everywhere. Like, you're not telling him information that's of value right now. But Alvido then says, well, okay, fine. But the church, we've done what we can to try to sway Lords Kiyama and Ono to help you, but it's to no avail. But as part of our deal, the deal that was made on the Black Ship when Toranaga narrowly escaped Osaka in the first place, Toranaga was supposed to allow the Portuguese to build a church in Edo. So that's what Alvida's come here for. And he says, look, like we held up our end of the deal. Like, are we allowed to build the church? And as this conversation is going on, Toranaga gets fucking pissed off because he knows that the Portuguese ultimately want to colonize and conquer Japan. So in the middle of it, he stops Tsuji, he stops Alvido from speaking Japanese. Now, Alvido is fluent in Japanese and Portuguese, but it's sort of like a sign of like you're no longer at this level when Toranaga says, "Look, I'm no longer going to communicate with them." So now, like Mariko, you got to translate for him. So he forces Alvido to speak Portuguese to Mariko, and Mariko is going to translate that to Toranaga. And even when Toranaga responds in Japanese, obviously Alvido understands all of it, but it's just kind of like this gesture of disrespect from Toranaga. But Alvido makes another plea. He says, "Look, I came on my own. The church didn't send me, and I, you know, this part was weird." But he basically says Lady Ochiba is obviously the one who manipulated Ashido, but there's no reason for Ochiba to hate Toranaga. But Alvido doesn't know the real backstory, so he doesn't know why Ochiba would hate Toranaga. So from Alvido's perspective, he's like, why don't you marry Lady Ochiba and then just turn this all around on Ashido, and then that's how you get out of this. So this is this is part one, so I have more clips. But what did you think about that? I'll pause it before I finish the second half of these negotiations, but just half one. What'd you think?
Yeah, I just think that Lady Ochiba is such a question mark to basically everybody, but maybe Mariko and Toranaga. I think the Portuguese don't really know what they're dealing with. They know that she's not going to be cool with the church, though, so that's already one thing right there that they got to kind of go with. I do like the fact that this guy has gone rogue and is not there. He's kind of there on his own accord to be able to negotiate here. Um, I'm just not sure Ochiba will go for it either at this point. It seems like she has a pretty bad taste in her mouth from her last interaction with Toranaga. There is a point, and I don't know if it's I think it comes later on in the scene, but it's the idea of like fear being Lady Ochiba's enemy. And I just don't know how rational her decision making is going to be able to maneuver like this. I know that Toranaga's specialty is looking for the loophole everywhere. I just don't think this is one that's going to pan out.
Yeah, to your point on fear, Toranaga then asks Hiromatsu what he thinks about it, and Mariko what she thinks about it. And Hiromatsu surprisingly is like, "Hey, yeah, maybe you should marry Ochiba. It's not a bad idea," which surprises me because Hiromatsu should know how deep all of this runs. So that is odd. Maybe there's something he doesn't know in the background. And then when Mariko is asked, "Hey, do you think you used to be tight with Ochiba? Do you think she would ever forgive me?" She gives a very political answer, but it's to your point. She says that Ochiba is not afraid of you, Toranaga. She's afraid of fear. Like this, none of this matters to Toranaga because he knows that there's no fucking way Ochiba is ever gonna forgive me. So he almost seems disappointed that they would all like be so naive to think that this could work. But Toranaga is a man of his word, so he does honor the pledge, and he allows Alvido to have some land, and he allows the church to build in his home city of Edo. We'll touch on that a little bit more down the line in this episode, but Hiromatsu also during all of this kind of calls Toranaga out, and only he's allowed to do this because he goes so far back with Toranaga, 46 years plus. But he's defiant towards Toranaga. He wants Toranaga to stand on business. He wants him to be a G. He says, "Why don't we fight? Like I don't know what your thoughts are. Do you really want to surrender?" And Toranaga's just like, "Shut the fuck up. Like be quiet. I don't want to hear that. We're surrendering." And Toranaga has heard the rumors of his generals wearing armor to the funeral, so he knows that they're being defiant. So he says, "I want a signed pledge that they will all surrender with me and march to Osaka. My son is dead. No more fighting." And we see Hiromatsu just look devastated. So what did you think about this? And this negotiation will take an interesting turn, but what do you think about that so far?
It might be my instinct because we're American. Like we grew up in a culture where it's like highly confrontational if somebody disrespects you, or like if you have to, like if you're confronted with battle, like the choice is always like fight in some way. But this was a moment where I didn't really understand what Toranaga was kind of getting at. I get that he's grieving, I get that he's going through a lot, but to just lay down like this was really frustrating to me. For one of the first times I've actually been frustrated at this dude, because he's incredibly smart and that he's always pulling the right strings. But this was a moment where I was just kind of dumbfounded. And I thought that there were a lot of good points made by Hiromatsu, and Toranaga just wasn't hearing it, which also seemed unlike him to not want to listen to anybody else.
Yeah. And with that being said, when Alvito gets his wish granted, he's pumped. He's kind of just like, sweet, I got what I came here for. But Toranaga tells him before he leaves, he said, on one condition, tell everyone back at Osaka everything you just saw here. So what did Alvito just see? Like, to your point, he just saw Hiromatsu openly challenge the idea of surrender, and Toranaga just tell him to shut the fuck up. We're surrendering, and get actually mad about it. So, and Toranaga looks weak right now, right? So he tells Alvito, hey, yeah, I'll give you what you want. Just make sure you tell everyone back in Osaka how much of a bitch that I look like. And the second he does that, Hiromatsu like looks up and realizes, oh, like that was so obvious. Why would he ever want that message to be delivered? So he goes and tells, all the guys, Buntaro, Yabu, and Omi, like, yeah, he wants to fight. Otherwise, why the hell would he tell Alvito to deliver that message? Yeah, what'd you think about that? Toranaga's being sketchy.
That the second part of that scene is when my frustration with Toranaga pulled back a little bit, because then you see that he is still trying to pull something off, sending that message. Especially coming from the Portuguese, they're not really incentivized to do much in terms of bidding on Toranaga's behalf. So there could be a ruse in the works here.
Yes. All right, this scene is this was a tough scene, man. This was tough because Buntaro is a fuckface for sure, but damn, bro, this is just tough. I titled this Buntaro the barista. It's kind of fucked up, but well, let's just go into it. So obviously, Mariko earlier in the day had agreed to allow Buntaro to make tea for her. It's a pretty intimate ritual, very very beautiful scene. Like, just this show, man, just so well done. But you get all like the cuts of it. It almost looks like a TikTok. It almost looks like a TikTok.
Yeah.
But Buntaro, he puts the boiling water, he swirls it, then he puts the matcha powder in. I think that's matcha, and he starts, he's mixing it in, he's mashing it, and then the shit looks great. It looks dank, and what's it called? Mariko drinks it, and she compliments him on his performance. Yeah, first half of Buntaro the barista. Quick thoughts.
You know that he's doing something that I think all of us have done at one time in our lives, and that is I'm going to change my ways. I've got to do my get back here. I've got to warm up. I've got to really earn back what I've lost from my girl. Making the tea in this manner, it seems like it might pay off. These two were in a weird spot, just incredibly weird spot, because he knows something went down with her and Blackthorn, not really sure what's happening, and now she's smiling and she's trying to be nice, but it's kind of like when you take a break with someone and then you meet them out for coffee a couple weeks later after you're taking the break, and it just feels more friendship than anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man. That cuts deep.
It's too real.
Too real. And this is where Mariko ethers Buntaro. You know that saying where it's like, yo, what's the worst thing she could do? Say no?
It gets worse.
It gets way worse. So Buntaro, and like this scene's funny because Buntaro, this like kind of just shows that he misses the point the entire time of why Mariko despises him. In addition to him obviously putting his hands on her, but Buntaro tells Mariko, look, like, we're definitely going to die in Osaka. And he reminisces on the early days they were together. He's like, oh, man, we had such good early days. And she's like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like, you had fun early on. This was always terrible for me. And then Buntaro says, look, let's kill ourselves tonight as, husband and wife. I'll grant you your wish of suicide. And he just misses the point because when Mariko wanted to kill herself, he wouldn't allow her. And now it's almost like he's taking her power away from her. Like, she can't even commit suicide in peace without him being involved and like him kind of taking control of it. So she looks disgusted when he gives that offer. He's thinking that he's doing the right thing. And this is where she just crushes the man's soul. And she says, I just really want a life of my own. I feel chained to you. She doesn't say these things. She says them in a much more eloquent manner. This is the way I'm saying them. But I'm a fucking idiot. So let's just keep that in mind. But she says, she says, you fail to understand that I'd rather live 1,000 years this way than die with you. And then she just gets up and walks away. And Buntaro just starts like fucking crying. Once again, you can't feel too bad for Buntaro because he beats the crap out of her all the time. But Jesus Christ, man. Jesus Christ.
You can see his soul leave his body when she says that. Damn, yeah, he was trying to send it out with a bang. He thought he was giving her what she wanted, but what she wants is peace, man. She doesn't want to be with you for eternity because you don't give her that peace, but you don't know that because, I mean, for as good as he is in battle, the emotional intelligence here just ain't too high. The line cut really deep. She just wants to live out her own story. To rejoin what her father started and then some was her previous motivation. Now she just wants some finality here. You do have to feel for Buntaro because he's shown a lot of character development. And yes, he's done some bad things, and in some ways he is a bad dude. But when he shed those tears, that incredible bit of acting there, maybe some of the best acting of the entire season that I've seen.
Yeah, the actor who plays Buntaro, dude, all the actors are fucking crushing it. But man, that was
Yes.
such good acting where it wasn't like emotional, like yeah, yeah, like it was just like that's how a fucking warrior cries, bro. Like that's some
That's a
serious
broken
pain.
man.
Yeah, that is a man who was crushed. Like there's nothing that he's gonna live for. I mean, maybe Toranaga is loyal to his warrior, but his next step is to die on the battlefield. Like that's got to be the way he goes. All right. 6 men left, right? This is when Blackthorn goes to pay a visit to his guys. And we find out that his guys haven't really been in prison, but they've kind of been in like, I'm going to call it house arrest, maybe region arrest. They're just allowed to kind of hang around in this small little shitty neighborhood and they just drink and bang, hookers the entire time. And
Yeah.
as you had mentioned earlier, Blackthorn is wearing those same robes that he first saw Alvido in as he walks over to try to find his man. So he sees one of his crew, Salomon. This dude's hammered. He smells like shit. They all smell like shit. And he's like getting real like touchy grabby, sexually assaulting basically some woman who's there. But then out of nowhere, he notices Blackthorn. And as he's doing this, Blackthorn walks away because he's just so disgusted. But he catches Blackthorn, right? Like it's tough to not notice another white guy out of the corner of your eye when you're one of like 8 white people in Japan at this era. But anyways, turns out that out of their crew, there's only 6 of them left. I think when they first started off in a Jiro, there was 12, and then that one guy got boiled alive, so there might have been 11. I don't know. I might be off with the numbers, but only 6 of them are left. And he's pissed at Blackthorn because it turns out that our man Blackthorn was an ambitious bastard, and he didn't necessarily have the interests of the entire crew on his mind. He wanted to gain glory, right? So it's implied that he made threats of Spanish ships, everywhere, and it kind of got their ships to chase after them, and they ended up being the first Englishmen to cross the Strait of Magellan. So I had to actually do some Googling on this, but that's that little path throughout Chile, right? Like down in South America. So it's how you're able to sail from Europe to Asia at that time without basically like sailing all the way around South America and dying. I think nowadays they use the Suez Canal. I could just be talking out of my ass right now, but I don't know what the
Sounds
fuck.
good to me.
I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, dude. But anyways, but at any moment throughout their adventure, they could have turned back, right? And there's probably numerous moments when they should have, because sailing back then was so fucking dangerous. But Blackthorn was like, no, I see Spanish, like there. I see Portuguese, like there. So they
don't go that way.
yeah, and now they're in Japan, and most of them are dead. Like, so Blackthorn did kind of ruin all of their fucking lives, and I would hate Blackthorn if I was them. So, what did you think about those realizations that came about?
You can't really blame Solomon for being so upset. there was that really kind of funny moment where Blackthorn is walking away and he's like, ooh, maybe I can get out of here without these guys seeing me. And he notices him right at the end as he's turning over his shoulder and he's like, oh, yeah, hey, man. So you knew it was going to be a shitty interaction just from that. I do take a little bit of issue because I think they were running pretty low on rations, and I'm not sure if there was a real way to get out of there at some points when they were getting closer to Japan after the leader of the crew had already, committed seppuku, but with a gun and with his head. So that was kind of like biased in my opinion. Maybe some hindsight being 2020 because nobody else was stepping up. It puts a lot in perspective. The life that Blackthorn saw in his future was never going to happen. Every time he's like, "Just let me get my ships, and I'll take the men, and we'll board the Erasmus." It was just a fever dream, man, a pipe dream. So these guys are shipbirds. Like these guys are not going to be able to run a ship way back on through. They would have been no use in the war if they would have joined up with him and fought on behalf of Toranaga. These guys are getting hammered on sake, creepy, being creepy with women, and just like getting smashed in the streets. Like that's all it is. They're not the crew that he thought they were in terms of what they have left in the tank. And but there was I don't think Blackthorn really like wild out on him until the guy called the traditional dress the skirts. That was where the line got crossed. And to tell you the truth, man, I got a similar reaction the first time I came home from college wearing a salmon-colored T-shirt. Central Maine is a ruthless place. So it is also hilarious that they went right back to living in filth gladly. Like when Blackthorn smells, he's like, "Oh my god!" Like he makes a funny comment about how terrible it smells just walking down their street. Like the kid who grows up drinking Orloff vodka and finds Smirnoff in college who just can't bring himself to go back. That's what Blackthorn's doing right now. He likes that good life.
Yeah, and he almost fucking kills this dude. Like he almost fucking kills him, dude. Like he starts punching him while he's out. This dude's already really weak because he's just been surviving off of nothing but fucking sake and like women this entire time.
Yeah.
He has not touched a vegetable, I bet. And
Which
Blackthorn
could be fun, but isn't very nutritious.
right. And Blackthorn pounds him in the face 6-7 times. Like I thought he was gonna kill him. He could have bashed his skull in. But yeah, it did happen when he kind of dissed Blackthorn's drip. And there's moments when Blackthorn realizes, dude, these guys might really be savages. Like maybe maybe the Japanese guys are right. Maybe we are fucking dirty, savage barbarians. But he's disgusted. And after he almost kills Salomon, he walks away. And yeah, like, dude, it would have taken a Coach Carter to fucking get this crew up and ready again to ship back or sail back to England. Like, come on, man. There's you guys are stuck here. There's no way you guys are making it back to your home country unless another British ship pulls up. Good luck, man. So Blackthorn now has no choice, right? He can't. The whole idea of getting his men and yeah, let's get the band back together. That dream is dead, man. So he does what he should do, which is he tries to go join Yabushige, and obviously has Mariko translate for him. And his whole thing is, I don't want to willingly surrender, understandable. And I bring a lot of value. I am a pilot, right? Like Blackthorn's value is actually insane if you really think about it, because he's very slowly becoming fluent in Japanese, and he also is a super skilled pilot of a ship. So Blackthorn actually low key is very, very valuable in this context. But he wants to join Yabu. He's like, look, I can run your guns, I can run your cannons. Like I know the seas. Like let's go fucking storm Osaka. And Yabu thinks about it because Yabu doesn't want to surrender as well. But he pulls back. And the reason he pulls back is because if he takes on Blackthorn right now, that is an act of treachery against Toranaga. Even if Toranaga is letting Blackthorn go, it's no bueno if Yabu takes him on, right? It's kind of like you can't date a girl that your boy has already dated. That's just so taboo. And if you're gonna fucking do that, I'm gonna hate you, and you guys better get fucking married. You better get married and have 3 kids, man. Like if you're gonna do some bullshit like that. So Yabu's like, I can't take you on right now because maybe Toranaga has something up his sleeve, and I gotta be really careful because I'm like Ashido hates me now. So Yabu thinks about it and doesn't end up going for it. And there is a moment in this when Blackthorn says, look, like I don't want to do this. Like I kind of hate Yabu, but I fucking respect him. He's a brave motherfucker. And Yabu gets that translation, and Blackthorn mentions the scene on the cliff where he's like, "You're a guy who's gonna take your fate into your own hands. You're never gonna bitch out. You're never gonna let someone else run your life. Like I saw what you did on that cliff that day, and I respect you for it, even if I don't like you." And Yabu's like, "All right, yeah, I get it. Like I respect you too." And obviously, Yabushige ends up declining this offer, but Blackthorn does offer up his sword. So, yeah, the dynamic duo was so close to being formed, but it ended up getting nixed by Yabu.
Reminds me of when Chris Paul almost got traded to the Lakers with Kobe. Like, but obviously the powers that be, the late David Stern blocked that. It had to be done, I guess. But it felt left field at first, but then you look into it, like you said, that moment on the cliff tied them together so much. And they've had these little interactions, like the little fake sword fight in the last episode, and a couple of exchanges here and there, where both of these guys want to take fate into their own hands instead of letting it find them. Granted, sometimes it manifests in horrific ways, like Yabu almost double crossing Toranaga like a few episodes ago with Ishido. Like, have we forgotten about that? Like, this man is not like a set in stone kind of ally here. He got boxed in, like straight up, he got boxed in. And Blackthorn straight up got boxed in. Like, granted, he learned over time that this was the option, but eventually he had no options and he had to be happy with it. So, I get what Blackthorn is saying. Part of me also can't count Toranaga out. We'll see how it plays out for him.
Yeah, I also think it's funny that even though Omi is the nephew, he's sort of like an advisor to Yabu, but Yabu doesn't want to admit it because it would be like an ego thing, like you're taking orders from your nephew. But Yomi's expressions, like Yabu kind of gauges how he's moving and if he's making the right decision or not based off of Omi's expressions. There'll be moments where he vetoes it, but Omi is like in a lot of ways his advisor.
Mm-hmm.
This was fucking funny. It kind of shows the sick, twisted sense of humor that Toranaga has, and so I titled this "Howdy Neighbor." When you uploaded this to the drive, it said "Neighbors 2014." Were you referencing that Zac Efron movie?
Yes.
I've watched clips of it. I haven't watched the full thing yet, but I gotta fucking get lit one of these days and watch that movie. But
Oh, dude, worth a watch.
that's the one with Seth Rogen, right?
Yes.
All right, that makes sense. But so we see the strip of land that has been allocated for Jin. So as mentioned earlier in the previous episode, Toranaga promised Jin some land just so she can kind of run her tea houses and start like a tea house franchise. Like she's basically starting a brothel franchise, and she's like, I'm gonna create a red light district and change the world. And she did change the world. I'll say that she changed the world. But Jin's like so happy. She's obviously had a crazy tough life, and she's had to fight tooth and nail to get where she's at. And she's just looking over at the land. She's like tearful, like she's so happy. And Kiku's watching from afar with Omi, and Kiku's really happy too. And Omi's such a shit stirrer, man. Because Omi's like, yeah, but like you're the one who made her all this money, Kiku. It should be you. And Kiku just brushes that off. She really does seem to love Jin and be loyal to Jin. So there's definitely some stuff that Jin has done for Kiku that money can't replace. So Kiku's super happy to see Jin happy. And at the same time, Alvito pulls up to the land and finds out that the land that he's been granted is right next to the land where Jin is going to build her tea houses. So Alvito's fucking pissed about that. It's hilarious because Toranaga does not like the Portuguese, and he probably respects Jin more than Alvito. And this is a sick trick for Toranaga to play. I will say, look, having the church. And they're what? Catholic, right? Alvito's Catholic. So, I mean, if you're Catholic, man, you could kind of just do shit and just go to confession, man. Like, listen, my entire town was Irish Catholic. Like, I saw a lot of shit. You just go to confession, or you don't. But having the church right next to the red light district in a lot of ways does work. But your thoughts on the neighbors?
Yeah, sometimes you're given a parcel of land and you just don't know what to expect. Very similar to the Zac Efron, Seth Rogen vehicle from 2014. You guys should definitely give it a watch if you haven't already. Follows a very similar plot line in some ways. One of the things to zoom in on, as Jin is, I wouldn't say hysterical, but she is overcome with emotion seeing this. We know that Toranaga might not pull it off, but just for her to have this chance at her dream is all the world to her, which I think is pretty cool. The A little bit of wisdom from Kiku when Omi questions, like, are there times when loyalty is not worth it? And Kiku, without hesitation, is just like, no, man, you're whack. Like, this is not the right way to think about this. So it's a closer way to look at it. Like, what is the importance of loyalty, and how does that feed into what goes down for the rest of the episode? Because Omi has to hold like two levels of loyalty. Am I loyal to Yabu, my own uncle? Am I loyal to Toranaga? What is this really going to come down to? What does it add up to? Like, do I really trust these guys, or do I look out for myself? Where Kiku already has it down pat. So she's just kind of spitting game without even really having to say much to him.
Yeah, I also think what are the over unders on one of the priests visiting the tea house once all of this shit is built up?
Plus, I mean, minus 10,000. Minus 10,000. They're probably going to have free fire cards.
Yeah, they get those coffee punch cards where it's like your tenth visit is on the house.
Welcome to the
You
Willow
gotta trade
World. Can I take
confessions
your
for
order?
for sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta trade confessions for sessions. All right, so then we cut back to Osaka Castle and Dao Yin, the late Taiko's wife, the one who was kind of like co-raising the heir with Ochiba. She has a stroke and she's basically on the verge of dying. And Ochiba comes over, and this scene was interesting because you would think that Lady Ochiba hates this woman, but she doesn't. She actually genuinely seems like really devastated by this and hurt by this. And they have a unique relationship because, like, Ochiba knows that Dao Yin, even though she drugged her and forced her to have sex with the Taiko, and there's some questions about if the son is a legitimate son. I definitely think there's some questions about that. But even if that was the case, you could tell that Ochiba knows that Daoyin is just playing her duty to the fullest, and it doesn't seem like she ever went out of her way to be malicious towards Ochiba. It was just it's all business, and she kind of took her in. So she's actually sad to see this old woman like basically on the verge of death. And before she dies, she does tell Ochiba, "Look, release the hostages. Don't start this fucking war, and don't align with the Shido. That dude is a fucking loser." That's like those were her last dying words to Ochiba, dude. Could you imagine that? Just being like, "Yeah, that guy sucks. He's a loser. Like he's whack." That's basically what she tells Ochiba. And so there's a lot to pick apart there. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Also, there is the question of, was the Taiko, he couldn't get a bunch of women pregnant, right? Like there was like hundreds of women that they tried to get pregnant and he couldn't get pregnant. And obviously in those days, you can't blame the Taiko. You're gonna have to blame, you gotta blame the concubines, right? Like that's how it went. And that's the reason why Dao Yin brought Ochiba in the first place. And Dao Yin also calls the son their son. So they co-raised the son. So Dao Yin really does love the son, even though it's biologically not hers. There is a question of maybe, did they have Ochiba, have sex with someone else and then pass it off as maybe the Taiko's kid? But there's a lot to be gleaned from that interaction. Let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know that their connection was as deep until this scene happened. Because she'd been an advisor to her before. You knew that she had warned about, Ishido is a loser, like he's a certified loser. You probably don't want to tie your hopes to him. A couple episodes back, and then this was just the whole way to send it over the top rope here. Ojiba seems rattled by this whole affair, which is interesting because with Toranaga on the run, she should feel a little more secure in what's going on now. But we get the sense that she's not quite as strong as she projects in some ways, which was hinted a little earlier in that convo between Mariko and other Jin back in Edo. So that to me seemed like cracks in the foundation.
Yeah, yeah, it is a good point. Like this scene probably showed me more about their entire relationship than any other scenes in the past. Um, all right, this next scene, this is obviously going to be the talk of the entire episode. I just titled this "Holy shit," because that's my only fucking reaction to everything that happened here. I had to rewatch it a few times and hit the subreddit hard to kind of get some answers. But this Toranaga calls all of them in, all of his generals in from Ito to basically swear and make a pledge that they're gonna surrender with him, right? And he also has Buntaro there, Yabu's there, Omi's there, Hiromatsu's there. The entire squad is there, and he's there to. And Toranaga's basically there as like the manager, basically like, you guys are fucking acting up. Stop acting up. Come with me and surrender with me. Like, follow me. You have to listen to me. And all of them are like, no, we don't want to do this, right? So several of the generals speak up, and they're just like, why don't we fight? Let's fight. Let's, like, we'll die with you on the battlefield, but why are we just giving up, man? Like, and it crushes them, because the reason why they followed Toranaga in the first place and pledged loyalty in the first place is because he's such a badass fucking warlord. He was a 12-year-old warlord. Like, this guy is the OG. So they're all like, what is going on right now? And as three of the generals kind of get ready to commit seppuku, because Toranaga in this scene tells them, no, you're listening to me, you're surrendering, and they would rather kill themselves than willingly march to the castle with Toranaga. So they want to defy Toranaga by killing themselves instead of actually actively rebelling against Toranaga, and that would be like actual disloyalty, right? So as they like kind of position their blades to commit seppuku, Hiromatsu takes over, and he kind of just takes one for the team. He tells all of the other generals, shut the fuck up, this is between me and him. And him and Toranaga have this crazy exchange where Hiromatsu's like, what's your deal? And then Toranaga's like, listen to me or die. And Hiromatsu's like, you're ready for me to die? Like, you'd rather have me die than like you're willing to have me die. Like this is how serious you are about surrender. And Toranaga's like, yeah. And once Hiromatsu makes that pledge, he kind of has to follow through on it. So he's like, yeah, so you'd be down for me to die. And Toranaga's like, then go die. Go die. And that in that moment, I guess Hiromatsu realizes, holy shit, Toranaga does have a plan, but I have to kill myself right now. And so he calls for he fucking calls his son Buntaro to be his second, to be the one who chopped his head off. And in the middle of that entire meeting, he commits seppuku, and Buntaro chops his head off, and Toranaga has to just watch his closest friend, someone who's been there with him for damn near 50 years, kill himself right in front of him. What the fuck, dude?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. The way that he pulled Buntaro in as the second also is a bit loaded, because he intimates to Buntaro that Buntaro is not to commit seppuku as well. Buntaro is to wait this out. Just like Buntaro was trying to off himself with Mariko, he tried to do a similar maneuver with his own father. And his father says, you're going to know what it is to be denied, which I think also plays into Mariko's relationship with Buntaro, because Buntaro hasn't really been denied until this episode with the tea, that disastrous tea date that they had. So Buntaro gets taught the same lesson in a couple different ways, which seems harsh, but at the same time, we're going to need this guy in battle if Osaka is the destination. So that was cool. And there's a connection between Toranaga mourning Nagakado and Buntaro then having to be the second for his own father, sort of an inverse in the way that these deaths occur, if that makes any sense, because they're both in tragic ways, just very different. The score in the background during the whole scene was incredible. It was intense. It was mysterious. It was not dated either. Like, they didn't just stick with a traditional score or like a score that would have been available back in the 1600s. It seemed almost not techno-y, but there was some magic going on that keyboard. That's all I'm going to say. It was just the way it had to be, because like you said, with Hiromatsu, I don't believe that he was explicitly told of a plan before this, just based on the way he sells it, the way it all goes down. I think he has to take Toranaga's cues, and the fact that he can take the cues this well to basically realized this is the only way for me to keep faith or to keep like what's going on alive was next level chemistry. But god damn, was that a hard death to take.
Yeah. Also, it's so fucking crazy. Also, I think I was on the subreddit after, and I think the reasoning behind all of that, and I totally agree with you. It's clear from this scene that Hiromatsu had no idea about what Toranaga was really planning until this moment where it all made sense. Because, like you had said, he tells Buntaro, no, 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 you can't kill yourself. And he slips in this comment where he's like, you got to believe in our Lord even when he doesn't believe in himself. And Buntaro's like, wait, so keep fighting for him because there must be some sort of reason. And I think the reason behind why Hiromatsu had to make this seed was because if he doesn't kill himself, then those three generals were going to kill themselves. And I guess that's a bigger loss overall. If you look at, they're younger, they're going to be better in battle. They're probably commanding more men. So Hiromatsu is the old guy, just takes one for the team. And now there's spies everywhere on both sides. So there's clearly people in this room that are spying for Ishido and Osaka. Now, no one in Osaka is going to doubt that Toranaga is going to surrender because it's like, holy shit, dude. He was just down to see his best friend cut his stomach open and kill himself. Also, I'm gonna wait till it flashes to that general that you said looks like Mac from Always Sunny. It's gotta be this guy, right? Is that the guy?
I think so.
Is that the guy who looks like Mac from Always Sunny?
Yeah, I think so.
Dude, that's so fucking funny. All right. So the aftermath of all of this is insane because Mariko and Toranaga meet and they actually kind of just drop bars to each other. They're just both like freestyling poetry to each other. And we find out that Toranaga, yes, indeed has a plan. And like Mariko now is finally a witness to all of this. And Toranaga's been several moves ahead this entire time. He knew the entire time that Blackthorne would try to work for Yabushige, and that's exactly what he wants. So he actually asked Mariko, has the Anjin tried to join Yabu yet? And so he wants that to happen. This is all part of his plan. And Hiromatsu dying wasn't part of his plan, but ultimately just the way things shook out, it had to be done in order to fully sell the story of Toranaga willingly going to his death in Osaka. So this is when we as the audience finally get color. And I think it's clear from this that Seki probably is not in on this plan, right? Would you agree with that? What'd you think about all of this?
I don't see any way that I was hoping that he would be just because like man, what a scumbag brother move that is. Like that makes Cain and Abel look tame in some ways. But I think that I don't think that he's aware of what's going down right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back in Osaka, Daoyin officially passes away, and not many words are exchanged in this, but Oshiba does bow to Ishido. Does that mean that she's going to formalize their alliance through marriage?
That's what it seems like to me. It seems like she's directly hinting at that. And you have this contrast between like Mariko and Ochiba here because in the previous scene, Mariko, who is a known teacher's pet of Toranaga, maybe the biggest teacher's pet, but she does question him and eventually she gets the knowledge that she needs, like, okay, and she's like, I'm ready to help out. I'm ready to chip in, like I'm back on board. But even she is not totally submitting to everything going on here. She was polite about it, but it's like when the teacher's pet finally talks while the teacher's talking and everyone's like, oh man. But this is Ochi was making a huge mistake here, in my opinion. I think she's operating out of the same fear mentioned earlier in the episode. This is the ultimate, like, move back to your hometown, settle down with high school romance type settle deal. This is rough.
Yeah, that's exactly. This is, she's had some bad relationships. That's putting it lightly with the Taiko, but she's been through a bad relationship. She's got a kid now. She's getting older, and she's just like, I just need a guy who's gonna treat me right. Be super stable, and someone that I can control. Like that wouldn't hurt, right? Someone who obviously doesn't get a lot of girls. Someone who's just a lot tamer. Fucking Daoyu's like, he's a loser. Don't get with that dude. Daoyu's like, yo, go get with Toranaga. He's a stud. All right.
You'll never have to worry about Ishido. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
Shido sucks. Do not give Shido the pussy. Do not give it to Shido. All right, so finally, this is the dynamic duo is formed. This is Shaq and Kobe, baby. Fucking Yabushige and Blackthorn. This time around, after that whole scene, everyone's like, "Oh my god, Toranaga's really gonna like surrender." You know, like Yabu just watched Toranaga watch Hiromatsu gut himself. So Yabu obviously has to head to Osaka as part of the surrender conditions, but he's now like, "Fuck that, I'm not surrendering." And this time he's like, "Blackthorn, let's roll." So now Yabu and Blackthorn are working together, and look, they're not going to be able to communicate without Mariko there. So just interestingly, Toranaga has instructed Mariko to roll with Yabu. Now, Yabu's probably like not aware enough to realize that this is all part of Toranaga's plan, but it's so obvious if you just zoom out, right? Like, why would, if Toranaga doesn't think that Blackthorn's going to work with Yabu, why would he need Mariko there, right? Like, if Blackthorn was still back in Edo or he's rolling with Toranaga, Toranaga would much rather need Mariko to be with him. So the fact that he sends her to along with Yabu makes it obvious that like, yes, he knows Blackthorn is on that ship, but they're now aligned. Omi's obviously not too pumped about it, but he's also not like, okay, like, fuck you, Blackthorn. It's just one of those things where he's like, man, are we sure? But yeah, Yabu and Blackthorn become allies. Holy shit, the dynamic duo is formed. Maybe Shaq and Kobe is a little bit too much, because that's probably given them too much credit, but yeah.
It's at least I don't know. It's at least LeBron Kyrie level.
Damn, okay.
I think Blackthorn's got to be Kyrie. Before Mariko shows up, I was laughing my ass off because I was like, this is going to be crazy with no translator when they're talking about being allies. And it's like, oh yeah, allies. And it's like, they know they're like trying to give it their best effort, but you can see on their faces, they're just like, oh, hopefully this doesn't go sideways because I can't really talk to this guy. It sends it off the idea well that this was all a plan that Toranaga had some say over. My one biggest question was, did he just get lucky that Nagakado died? And I don't want to say like lucky, because obviously your son dying is not what you want to see happen, but like that time he had to maneuver here, he would not have had that had Nagakado not died. What was the backup plan? I guess that's one thing that I'm a little hung up on.
Yeah, that is interesting, and that's basically how the episode ends too. Is Toranaga, and we'll touch on what that question, what the answer to that question is. But Toranaga, this man who was supposedly too sick to see anyone, go to his own son's funeral, he springs out of bed, like, we're talking 35-inch vert type of shit. Gets out of bed, no problem. Goes to Kato's burial ground with no one really watching. Pays Nagakado his respect, and pays Hiromatsu his respect, and he tells Nagakado, like, obviously he wasn't planning for his son to die. That was a complete accident, but his son dying, like you said, gave him 49 days of time, and he gives a heartfelt thanks to both his son and Hiromatsu's sacrifice in this greater play that he has. Holy fucking shit. Yeah, I don't know. It's clear that his strategy was not to surrender, but maybe, like, now that you're saying that, Damon, maybe he was planning on surrendering at first and then was just like, we'll see what happens, who knows? I don't know. Because you're right, if he doesn't have the 49 days, because, all right, here's the plan, right? The plan is to get into Osaka without actually having to storm the gates, right? Like Trojan horse style. That's the plan. You get inside enemy walls. You don't need as big of an army because you could just take out all of the generals right there. You take them all out. It should pretty much be a cut and dry victory. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what the 49 days, and I think that Toranaga was planning that from the get-go, but I don't know if the 49 days gave him time to kind of figure out how Blackthorn could be involved in this, how he could use Yabushige. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it must have benefited him because things seemed kind of dire last episode as far as Toranaga making a decisive choice on how he was going to form a comeback. He didn't have a clear answer, and it seemed odd that he would get the privacy on the way to Osaka to then round the troops up. Let's just say Nagakado never tries to kill Seki. Let's say they just all ride into Osaka. He's not going to be able to maneuver everybody, or at least it doesn't seem like he could maneuver everybody based on how his body language and what he was saying last episode was holding on. And the fact that nobody else knew of a secret plan either, it just seemed like it could just be fate. It could just be that. And I hate that because it's a terrible explanation on my behalf, but I'm just going to lean into that fate principle because the show does it pretty well, and maybe that's all part of the major theme.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to think because Toranaga is like he's not the type of dude who only has one plan. He's the epitome of like, all right, here's my plan, but I know plans like it's what's the Mike Tyson line? It's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face or something.
Yeah.
He's fully embodies that, so he knows at any moment I might have to deviate and make a new plan. So everything is just a fucking blueprint, but it's flexible as hell. Pause, and he can just he's always taking whatever road is best. So maybe it is one of those things where he had a shittier plan, but then Nagakado's death gave him a chance to come up with a better plan. So he just pivoted to a better plan. But the entire time he was thinking, I'm not going to surrender. But now this actually gave him more of a chance for a legitimate victory. But that pretty much does it for the episode. Episode 9 is next week. We'll be covering that as well. Thanks for everyone for being patient. I know we're always a few days behind, but we're busy as fuck. We got full-time jobs. And we've been covering other stuff as well. Finished Tokyo Vice up. We're still doing House of the Dragon Season 1 just to get everyone brushed up before Season 2 drops. And we'll be streaming and breaking down The Sympathizer, which drops on HBO on Sunday. Damon, any final thoughts before we end this?
The ending of the episode with Toranaga looking at the ashes of his son and essentially, to paraphrase, like, all right, man, thank you. I'm going to do this for you. You and Hiromatsu's sacrifices are not going to be in vain. Pumped me up so much that we finally get the version of Toranaga we've been waiting for, and shit's about to go down. So if you haven't tapped into this yet, now's the time.
Well said. Tap into this fucking show. Watch our streams except for one of them because the audio is terrible. Like, skip that one. But watch all the other streams. And we will be back. It's been a pleasure. Catch y'all later.
Later.